Let's decorate the sweetest love story cookies this world has ever seen. Hi, I'm Leslie with Leslie's Cookies and Treats, and if you love decorating sugar cookies or you want to learn how, you're in the right place. Let's decorate together. So if you're starting a new chapter or have your own love story to tell, or you just need cookies for your next book club event, let's decorate these cookies together. I'm starting off by painting a thin layer of white icing at the bottom of the book, and this is going to turn into the pages of our book. So just put down a squiggle of icing and then use a dampened paintbrush to smooth it across the cookie. And then just grab a scribe or a toothpick and drag some lines through that wet white icing. This will give the appearance of texture, so it will look more like pages of our book. And then I'm using a 15-second flood consistency icing here, and I'm just going to touch down and then outline the spine of the book with my icing, and then go ahead and outline the rest of the cookie. I'm going to touch down at each corner and then lift my piping bag up slightly while I drag a line, applying even pressure. And then because I don't want the spine to get a crater, I'm going to put a line of icing there and let that set up a little bit while I flood in the rest of the cookie using the same icing I used for the outline. And then I'll take my scribe and move the icing out to the edges and settle it down, popping any air bubbles and smoothing out any peaks. I'll give it a little jiggle, and then I'll set this cookie aside to dry for about 20 minutes until the icing crusts over. Now that it's crusted over, I can come back in and flood in the spine of the cookie, and then I'll just use my scribe to move the icing around and get it up next to the icing we've already piped. And I'll keep an eye out for air bubbles and make sure I pop those so we don't get a crater. And my icing is overflowing a bit, so I'm just going to wipe it away here. Then I want a nice straight edge here where the spine meets the front of the book. So I'm just going to take a dampened paintbrush and smooth that line out and straighten it out. Then I set the cookie aside to dry again before coming back in and just adding this bottom back cover of the book. Now I'll let it dry completely. Now that it's dried completely, I'm going to use my red royal icing in a detailed consistency, and I'm just going to flatten it out across the seam and cut a really tiny hole in the top. And then I like to practice writing my words on a paper towel before I put them on the cookie. So I've got my projector set up here, and I'm just projecting the words love story on the paper towel. I'm just going to practice piping that out with my royal icing. I used Canva to come up with the font for the words love story and to space everything out. And I'm just projecting that image down onto my paper towel. If you don't have a projector, check out my video on using the tissue paper method to transfer your letters onto the cookie. So I'm just going to touch down and follow along with my projector. I'm holding my piping bag kind of off to the side so I don't block the projector. I'm going to touch down, lift up, follow my line of icing as it's falling, rather than watching my piping bag, and lay my line down as close as I can to where the lines are on the projected image. And you want to make sure that you're using a detailed consistency icing here, otherwise your letters might run all together as you're piping them. And if you have any peaks or start and stop bumps, you might want to take a minute and grab your scribe or your toothpick and settle those down. Otherwise, I'm just going to shift the cookie here a little bit and then go down and do the bow with my black icing at the bottom. And again, I'm just touching down, applying even pressure with my piping bag as I follow along the line with the bow. And then I'll come back in and pipe the bow loops, making sure that the tip of my piping bag is clean before I start each loop. And that's it, the words are done, and all we have left to do is add the little lines on the spine of the book. And to do that, I put my flood consistency royal icing bag inside of another bag with a little tiny hole, and I'm just going to make the two little lines at the top and the bottom here for the spine. And then this cookie will be done. What I didn't mention was that I did use some dust to dust the edges so it gives more of a little airbrush look. And you can see how I did that in the other videos for this set. I'll leave links in the description. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this story and that it inspired you to start your own chapter soon. Let me know in the comments.